go live. Oh, here's Ivy. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, great. Welcome, Ivy. Awesome. So I'm Lara Elfstrand. We are live on Facebook and recording and so excited. One of my big passions is helping to reduce the chance of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And the sound is going through my piano in the other room, which it was not a moment ago. Give me just a second to see if I can fix that. I'm like, it was not doing that before we hit record. Okay, there we go. That should be better. So, now it's still doing some funkiness. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, that sounds better. Okay, thank you for your patience. One of my big passions is helping to reduce the chance of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. Did that just stop going live? No, I think it's still live on Facebook. Okay, I think I fixed it. And so one of the big ways we can do that is through exercise, except we know that our bodies, if you've just had a baby, your body is recovering from labor. And so it's not the same as exercising at other times of our lives. And so I'm really excited to have physical therapist Rachel Pope here to give us some tips and ideas and 5 secrets on getting moving again after you have a baby. So welcome, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you everybody for supporting us and being flexible through technology challenges.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to be here and talk about this. So this, I'm just going to go over kind of like 5 main points, and this is for you if either you're pregnant and kind of like preparing for postpartum, or if you've just had a baby and you're not really sure like what you should be doing and when. I kind of want to dispel the whole 6-week all clear thing that's really out in society right now. So, as far as like, what does that really mean? What does a 6-week all clear really mean? And does that mean that you shouldn't be doing anything until then? Does that mean that you go back to doing normal activity at 6 weeks? Or is there some sort of variation of that in between? And so, like Lara said, I'm a physical therapist. I've been a PT for 16 years. I've been in women's health for like the last 4 to 5. And I'm a certified pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist. So this is really what I have been doing for the last few years. So let's get right into it. And if anybody has any questions or comments, pop them into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer those as I go along or at the end as well. So the first thing that I want to highlight is that after you have your baby, regardless of your delivery method, so whether you had a cesarean or vaginal delivery, really you should be starting with pelvic floor exercises immediately. So as soon as you're feeling ready to do it, so like within like a couple hours of delivery, like just reconnecting with your pelvic floor is really, really imperative to your overall pelvic floor and core recovery long term. So you might not feel like doing it a few hours after labor and delivery, but within the first few days, you should be doing some pelvic floor contractions, or Kegels, they're called, right? So tightening in through the pelvic floor. Now, pelvic floor PT and, you know, pelvic floor rehab is not just Kegels. I just want to throw that out there too. But this is really like one of the first things that you can do after you deliver. And so we can get sort of do some variations on those pelvic floor contractions. I actually have, I'm gonna throw it out there. I have a link to postpartum pelvic floor exercises, and so it's actually a series of like contracting and breathing combined with body movements to help you heal from labor. So I have that resource available on my website. Hopefully, we can maybe link it in the comments for anybody who's interested. My website is just rachelpope.co, not com.co. So you can find it on there. So that's a really great resource there. So you, like I said, you can start your pelvic floor exercises right after you deliver. And you might not feel like it, but it's a good thing to do because a lot of times right after you deliver, you may be experiencing like incontinence for like the first couple weeks, you know, after you deliver, because that pelvic floor has been, you know, it's undergone a lot of stress. So getting on top of that right away and reconnecting with your abdomen, so with your abs, so core and pelvic floor really go hand in hand, is really, really important. Is it okay if I just keep going? Does anybody have any questions about that, or does that make sense? Good? We're good. Okay. So I'm just going to keep going. So just interrupt me if you have any questions. The second thing that's really important after you have your baby is to start walking as soon as possible. And again, this is sort of relative. So I'm not talking like go out and walk 3 miles or go out and walk a mile or go out and walk an hour, however you tend to gauge your distance or your time. But get up and get moving, you know, a little bit. So you're going to, you know, a lot of times I hear like in the midwife world is, you know, walking sort of around the bed or sort of in the vicinity of your bed for the, you know, first few days, and then kind of expanding that radius of like how far you're walking. But, you know, in the beginning, you're just going to be tending to your baby. So, you know, in the vicinity of your bed, to and from the bathroom, you know, and then within your home. And then that's gradually, that radius is going to expand so that you are walking, you know, maybe depending on where you live. Like for me, I live out in the country. So walking around my home and then walking, you know, down the road a little bit. So it's definitely, you know, progressive, but walking is like one of the best things that you can do for your, you know, your overall recovery. And again, it depends, you know, like for me, you know, after I've had 4 babies, I just delivered my 4th one 9 weeks ago. She's actually sleeping on my lap right now. I don't know if you can see, there's a little baby hand right here. So if she wakes up, I'll have to tend to her. But yeah, so like for me, walking is, you know, it's literally just like couch to dining, you know, dining table to bathroom initially. And after I just had my last baby, I felt like I couldn't even like stand up straight all the way. Like I just, like everything was just so fatigued. So just working within the confines of like what your body is capable of and what it will allow, but it also felt really good to be standing up straight instead of like sitting and nursing and lying down all the time too. So you have to find that balance between doing some to start to get moving, but not doing too much either, right? And for me personally, to like go out for a walk, to like start walking for like any length of time for, you know, 15 to 30 minutes. I typically don't start that myself until like the 2.5 weeks. That's when I start to feel like my energy is a little bit better. And with a lot of the patients and clients that I work with, I find that seems to be pretty common with a lot of moms too. So there's no rush to like get back to a certain level of activity or exercise, or even just with your walking, which is what we're talking about. It's really based on how you feel in the beginning. And I have sort of qualms with that, that phraseology of just like going based on how you feel. But in the beginning stages, in the very beginning, like the first couple of weeks, you really do need to kind of go based on how you feel. I've worked with some moms where, they get to like 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks, and then their energy is starting to return. I've talked to some moms where they're 2 and 3 days out and they feel wonderful, and they're out and they're doing a lot more. So really it does depend for you. Okay. So that's the second key, is to start walking as soon as possible, gradually increasing like how much, how far, how long you're doing that based on how you feel. And I kind of touched on this a little bit, but sort of moving into the third point is to not do too much before, I'm going to use the 6 week. I'm going to use that 6 weeks just because that's like a common term that we hear and that we use, in the medical field. Is, most of us go for our 6 week postpartum checkup. And I think that's sort of where that comes from, is that sort of 6 week all clear. But if we talk about this in regards to the 6 weeks, you want to make sure that you're not doing too much before the 6 weeks, because that can be cause some negative things if you do too much, because your pelvic floor has undergone a lot. And I work with a lot of moms who've had C-sections, and they say, well, I've had a C-section, my pelvic floor, is unscathed essentially. And no, totally wrong, because your pelvic floor, you've carried a baby for hopefully somewhere close to 9 months, right? Depending on when you deliver. So your pelvic floor has already undergone a lot of stress and strain just from carrying the weight of the baby, right? Pressure on your bladder, all of those kinds of things, all the postural changes that your body has undergone with pregnancy, that puts more stress and strain on the pelvic floor too. So keep in mind that, like I said earlier, regardless of your method of delivery, I like to throw that out there, whether you've had a C-section or not, your pelvic floor has undergone a lot of stress and strain. And if you're somebody who has gone into labor naturally and then had a C-section, right? So now you've gone through this massive expansion through the pelvic floor muscles, and you've also now had a major surgery too. So, take those things into consideration. But my point being is that you don't want to do too much before that 6 week mark. Okay. So doing too much, some moms who, 2 and 3 days later, they feel great. They go out for, I've heard them say up to 5 mile walk, which I think is like incredible. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But what they do is they sort of layer on, they feel great, 2 and 3 days postpartum, they're doing, so many miles or out there for so many minutes. And now, 3 weeks later, they realize that they have overdone it, and they have, not to scare anybody who's on here, but now they have prolapse symptoms, right? Because they've done too much, because their pelvic floor hasn't healed enough and they've done too much in that regard. Or, you might develop leaking or incontinence later down the road if you're not taking precautions to heal properly in the earlier phases, right? So we just want to be active, but we also want to be mindful of what our body has just accomplished, essentially, right? So don't do too much before that 6 week mark. And now on the flip side of that, heading into my fourth point, is to not do too little either and start too late. There's no such thing as starting too late and like there's no hope for you. But like I said earlier, is that you can start doing pelvic floor and core exercises immediately after you deliver. So you don't want to do nothing either. So I've also worked with moms who essentially don't really do anything until they go see their doctor, and their doctor says, yep, everything looks good from their perspective, right? So like everything has quote unquote healed. And we now know that healing takes much longer than 6 weeks. It takes actually up to 7 months postpartum. So keep that in mind as well. But you go to the doctor and the doctor says, everything looks good. Go back to your normal activities. And so like, what does that mean exactly? Go back to your normal activities. But if you haven't been doing anything up until 6 weeks and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, my doctor says I can go back, I feel pretty good, and you just resume like everything like normal, again, that puts you at a risk for pelvic floor issues. So we're talking prolapse, we're talking incontinence, maybe you have an ab separation. It's not going to help your ab separation heal if you don't do anything and then go rush out and do too much, right? So again, finding that balance of doing the right things at the right time in the right order so that things can heal properly and that you feel your best throughout your recovery is really key. So don't do too much, don't do too little, but you need to find that happy medium. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the fifth thing is that your pelvic floor and your core really need to be healed well before diving into higher level activities. So I'm a runner. I've been a runner for as long as I've been a PT. I've done, distances from 5K up to 50K and then and beyond that. So running is a high impact sport. It's something that I sort of specialize in with the population within women's health. So women's health is a specialty, and then running is on, sort of on top of that as a specialty. So I kind of talk about that a lot, but there was research that was done a few years ago now. And so they came out with guidelines suggesting that high impact running essentially, but that's a high impact activity. So if you play sports, I worked with moms who play soccer, moms who like to do HIIT workouts, right? Like high intensity workouts where there's lots of jumping and impact, right? Running falls into that category as well. So they are suggesting waiting until the 12-week mark before you start doing that sort of stuff. Again, that 6-week all clear, there's a lot of moms who are jumping back into running at 6 weeks. And then I end up seeing them because, at 8 weeks or 10 weeks or now 6 months down the road, things are just not feeling right because they haven't done the right things in the right order to get back to where they need to be. So, the 12-week mark is kind of like the new, I would say, whatever that phrase is, pink is the new black, 12 weeks is like the new 6 weeks kind of thing, right? So, keep in mind, and not even necessarily maybe you're not an athlete, maybe you're not a runner, maybe you don't go to the gym, but, do you have kids who are older? Do you have a toddler? Do you have kids who play sports, who you want to kick a ball around in the backyard, or you have a toddler who doesn't want to hold your hand in the parking lot and start away, and then you have to run after him or her, right? So, these are instances where you are running, right? Or you have a trampoline and your kids want you to do the trampoline with you, or you go to the trampoline park, and now you're jumping, right? So these are impact activities. So even if you're not an athlete per se, you are an athlete, you're a mom, right? So you do have to be able to to withstand impact and do some higher level activities with your kids, even if it's for just a short burst or short spurt, or you have a dog and your dog runs away or whatever, or is chasing after a chipmunk and you have to go chase your dog, right? I mean, there's lots of daily instances, or you have to run across the street, because there's a car coming, right? So there's lots of instances where you are performing activities where your core and your pelvic floor have to turn on, in the blink of an eye and work properly so that, when you dart after your kid or your dog, you're not peeing yourself, or, you're not feeling those, that heaviness or those prolapse symptoms, right? So, so whether you're planning on going back to running or CrossFit or bodybuilding or soccer or basketball or whatever it is as a mom postpartum, you're still a mom postpartum. So you should still be doing, all the proper rehab afterwards. And there are a lot of moms who just don't, and that's part of the reason I got into this field is that the care isn't there. And a lot of moms are not even aware of what they should be doing and when. So that's sort of where I come in to try to help moms either on a preventative level to make sure that, pelvic floor issues don't pop up, weeks, months, or even years down the road. Or I see them, unfortunately, a lot of times afterwards, after they're already experiencing issues. And so we sort of rework things and get that core and that pelvic floor working properly again, so that we resolve the leaking, we resolve the prolapse, we close the, the ab separation, so that they're feeling better, they're not having pain or symptoms, and they can, pick up their kid and do the stairs and carry the groceries and carry the car seat without having to worry about, all of those kinds of things. So those are kind of my 5, they sort of overlap, right? But, 5 main things to really be thinking about after you have your baby. So, get your pelvic floor working, working in concert with your abs, start walking. And then, don't do too much. Don't think that you're like, super mom. You are super mom. Every mom is super mom, but don't go like all crazy, all out, because just because you're feeling good, your body is still very much healing. Like I said, up to, 6 or 7 months postpartum. And then, thinking about, doing some of those higher level activities where your body's with taking impact, it's going to be closer to that 12-week mark, where your body's going to be a bit more able to do those kinds of things.
Okay, so I'm curious, are there like additional thoughts on like what's not too much and not too little?
Yeah, like the moms that I talk to who are, going out and doing like 3 miles, 3 to 5 miles of walking, 3 to 5 days postpartum, like that's too much in my opinion. Or moms who are going out backpacking or like hiking with their kids in a, their toddler in a pack for, lots of miles or lots of time. Again, that's too much too, because carrying a toddler for that long on your back is too much for your pelvic floor. I could give you lots of examples, but again, it's like, we have some like sort of, hard and fast rules about, like that 12-week mark for impact. But a lot of it is still like, we're still finding out, like these guidelines that I mentioned literally just came out in 2019, which was just a year after I had my second baby. And I made all the mistakes myself, after my second. I thought, and I feel embarrassed to admit this because I'm a PT, but I was like, oh, I'm going to wait until 8 weeks to start running instead of 6, right? Like the 2 weeks is going to make that much of a big difference. And I actually had a really, really hard time getting back to running on a regular basis. I do have a history of like having some pelvic girdle pain too, so that sort of played into it as well. But I got back to running after just 3.5 months after my third baby. So I had my son, had struggled getting back to running, learned these guidelines, did my continuing education and lots of experimentation on myself and with my clients and stuff like that, and totally turned it around by the time I had my next baby. So I'm hoping after this baby, it's the same, where it doesn't take as long to get back. But yeah, like I started too early with running, and I think that prolonged the pain that I was having, and prohibited me from getting back to like my regular routine of normalcy for a really long time. And I think a lot of moms, especially in like the world that I'm in with a lot of athletes, make that mistake. But there is also research to say, like, if you do too much, where like you're up and about and you're going out, and a lot of times it's hard. Like when you have older kids, like you have to be doing some of those things. But there is research to say that there is, there's long-term negative impact on your pelvic floor and even on our aging, believe it or not, pending like how we treat like the first, 30 to 40 days postpartum and how much resting, relative rest that we're doing in that time as well. So, so it's not super black and white, but like use your judgment, like going out for, a 12-mile hike is not the best idea, at 4 weeks postpartum,
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm curious
Yeah.
if anybody else who's here has any questions?
Oh, I just realized I had my microphone on before. I'm so sorry.
I couldn't hear you at least. I was kind of watching it and I didn't hear anything personally.
Okay, awesome. I have 2 questions. My main one is, like, so what can I do before those 12 weeks that's really helpful to build up to go back to running? So I had my baby like a week after you, Rachel. And so
Okay, awesome. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm at 8 weeks.
Okay.
At 8 weeks. And I'm just like, what can I do to build up my strength besides Kegels? I've been doing like just like the postpartum videos of like body weight exercises in the living room and swimming. But I don't know if there's any other like, I'll turn my camera on too, sorry. Any other like focused exercises that I can do that'll help me be able to run? Because I did exactly what you said not to do. And right at 6 weeks, I went and played a game of Ultimate Frisbee. I was very careful about it, but still my back hurt the next day, like in the same spot where I felt my son's head come down.
Yeah.
And that's my pelvic floor.
Yeah.
So what can I be doing meanwhile before those 3 months?
Yeah, so there's a lot that you can and should be doing, and I actually I can't go into it all right now because it's pretty extensive, but this is what I do. This is sort of my like signature program, is to work with moms to get back to running. So you know, the Kegels is definitely a good place to start, and then working into body weight exercises is a great next step. But you also need to do sort of runner specific exercises, you know, before you start running again. Runner specific exercises for impact management and you know, pelvic floor management to make sure that you can withstand, you know, those impact forces before you start running again. I have a Facebook group for moms who run, so I would love to have you join because I do lots of free trainings in there too, specifically for runners. But yeah, I mean, lots of stuff. Like I usually take moms through sort of a 3-phase progression of, you know, pelvic floor and core rehab, and then moving into sort of strength and endurance, and then moving into runner specific exercises, and then we're running. So it's, you know, there's definitely a lot to it. And that's why I do what I do, because it's a great question and it's very confusing for a lot of moms who run, of what they should be doing and when they should be doing it. So yeah, it sounds like you're on the right track now, but join the group and get some more insight as to like what you should be doing sort of to prepare for running.
Yeah, I'm in the Facebook group, I guess.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
If you want to tell me your package deals or something in a message to see if I could get your plan or.
Yeah, let's definitely connect.
Okay. And because then my other question is like, yeah, the thing they said all through pregnancy and now in postpartum, listen to your body. And it was like, okay, so one time the day after, my body did tell me that was too much. But in general, it's like my body feels great. And so is there anything in the moment that I can pay attention to, or even the day after, like certain, I know incontinence is always brought up. I haven't had any incontinence. So I'm like, okay, that is
that's good.
But what should I be listening for in my body that before wasn't really, you know, it's a very different kind of listening.
Yeah. Yeah. So incontinence, I mean, that's a pretty straightforward one. Prolapse symptoms, right? So that would be like any like heaviness that you feel in the vaginal area, or sometimes moms will say it feels like I have a tampon in, but they don't really. So that would be sort of in the moment thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, what you're saying kind of holds true, especially for, you know, for those of us who are runners or athletes who are used to exercising, is like you feel okay during, and then it's like afterwards. So like either immediately afterwards or hours afterwards or like the next day. So my best advice is to gradually increase. So just like I talked about, like with the walking, to like be slow and progressive with the walking. You want to do the same thing like with your just like your regular exercises, and then with once you start running again, because if you feel great and you go out and do, you know, 5K or whatever, and you still feel great, and then you do like another workout afterwards, like how do you really, and then you don't feel great. So like what's the thing that caused you to not feel great, right? So you want to just be intentional with like how much you're introducing at a time, and like how much new stuff at one time, so that you can kind of like play the sleuth and figure out like what was it that kind of like set things off. But other things to kind of be mindful of, like if you have a diastasis or like an ab separation, if you notice like if you notice the separation is worse, if you notice more doming or coning, right, with exercise, if you're noticing any lower ab soreness, that can be another sign that like your pelvic floor is not where it needs to be. That's a pretty big one, actually. Like with a lot of moms that I work with, is that they feel like their lower abs are just like really, really sore after doing something. Back pain, pelvic, pain in the pelvis, pain in the SI joints, pain in the hips, pain in the knees, like pain anywhere essentially, can be an indication that your pelvic floor is not functioning at 100%. Because I kind of consider, we talk about core, a lot of times we're referring just to the abdominal area, but, our hips are part of our core as well. Our knee joints, the muscles that work the hips also connect to the knees, right? So like everything is all interconnected. So I would just pay attention to like, does anything feel like off or tweaky, or just like not right? But yeah, I mean, it is hard. I mean, like you make a really good point of like, just go how listen to your body and like see how you feel. And that can be confusing, and that can be sort of a hard thing too, to not really be sure of like what you're looking for, but also like, oh, did I do too much? And like sometimes it's too late if you did too much, because then you kind of noticed it. So like that symptom that you were mentioning, right? Like I hope you sort of are like, oh yeah, that's probably not a good idea. I probably shouldn't be, running or jumping or like, cutting right and left or whatever it is that you're doing when you're playing ultimate frisbee, and hold off on that to build your strength before sort of attempting something like that again. And that, playing ultimate frisbee is like, that's even like a step above running, because you're not just running in a straight path, right? Like you're moving side to side. It's like quick movements, depending on how intensely you're playing, right? So, that's something that, that's like a sport above running, because it's running combined with a bunch of other things too. So, you want to really be prepared to go back to something like that. Does that answer your question, or was I just like all over the place?
No, I mean, it does. I think I need to see the plan of what I can do meanwhile. I am curious. So you mentioned like the different things to pay attention to. Like I know I have felt the lower ab soreness that you talked about. Is it okay, like to a slight degree? Does it mean like you're working on it, or is it like if you feel it at all, nope, back up, you shouldn't feel those things? Or is it kind of like soreness after a good workout sometimes?
That's a good question. Did you ever feel your lower abs before you delivered? Like, did you feel that like when you were pregnant or like pre-pregnancy? No, right? So like, let's think
core exercises during pregnancy. So I just like did nothing for the core. So I was like,
yeah.
okay, I don't have diastasis recti.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an indication too of like, is this like a new thing that you're experiencing that you've never experienced before? Well, then it's probably an indication that, that your pelvic floor needs more work. Now, does that mean, I just did a live about this last week, like, does that mean, no, you shouldn't be doing any activity that causes, lower ab soreness, or that causes a little bit of, discomfort or soreness somewhere? No, not necessarily, but it's definitely a precaution, right? I wouldn't necessarily push through that or add on to that if you're experiencing that lower ab soreness, because that's your body telling you, hey, like this muscle group is not strong enough, so I can't really tolerate much more than what you're giving me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions?
Not from me.
Not from you. Okay, perfect.
I just love how you talk about being a sleuth, because I don't know. I talk about being a detective of your kid too. Like, I feel like it's a season of a lot of sleuthing in your body
Yeah.
and your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's hard, when you are a new mom, whether that's for the first time or the fourth time, right? You're still like trying to figure out, like, did I do too much? Or, what was that thing that I did that maybe, caused me to feel some discomfort? And I'm at that phase too, where, I'm out in the yard, I'm doing like fall cleanup and like gardening. And so for me, like with my history of my pelvic girdle pain, like squatting and bending and like being in that position for a long time has set off my symptoms before. So I have to be careful with like, oh, I would love to, like the baby's sleeping, I would love to just like spend, however long she's sleeping for, get as much done as possible. But that isn't necessarily like in my best interest, because, like Audrey was saying, is like, well, how do I know? Because like sometimes it's later that I feel it. And I'm the same way too, is like sometimes in the moment I feel it. And sometimes later I feel it, like that night, or like, while I'm sleeping at night, I'll wake up and be like, oh, maybe I like did too much. So I have to sort of scale it back. Whereas like in the past, I would want to just like get everything done possible that I can all in one go. And now, well, the baby sort of limits that too, right? Like kids, like you can't I can't like go out and garden for like 5 or 6 hours like I used to. But, now I have to sort of be, more aware and sort of more progressive with it too, of like, okay, I'm only going to do like this section. That's only going to take me like 30 minutes. And then I'm going to wait and see how I feel, later that day, and then even the next day before I do more, because sometimes it's 48 hours, right, before you start to even notice if you're sore from something. Like if you, like anybody who's ever done like a new workout or anything before, right, you're like, oh, I feel awesome, and like the next day you feel great, and like that second day you're like, oh man, right? So you have to like really and that's why I always tell people, and why I just said now too, is like, you don't add in too many new factors, because then you don't know like what did it. So like for me, like, gardening for an hour, and then, walking on my treadmill and going for a hike with my kids in the woods, like at, 3 weeks postpartum, that would have been way too much. Right. Whereas now I've sort of added each of those pieces individually, and now I sort of know what my limit is as far as like how much I can do. So now I can do all of those things, right? Like I can do my exercise in the morning, walk on the treadmill for half an hour, I can do my little saunter with the kids through the woods, and I can spend some time gardening without any ill effects. But I'm also 9 weeks out right now at this point, right? So I've added each piece individually, not all at once, right? So like I didn't wait like 6 weeks and like all clear and like go ahead and do everything all at once, because that would not be a good idea, right? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. That's so helpful. Anything else you think you wish more mamas knew?
I wish more moms would just invest in themselves, and I don't necessarily mean the money, but I mean the time into themselves. And it's hard with a little one. My kids are Velcro babies through and through for like the first several months. So like for me, like working out is like the 5 minutes that my baby tolerates the swing until I can wear her and do like some other exercises. But, that's me investing in me and making sure that I make the time for my own rehab, because I know how important it is. So, and a lot of moms who don't necessarily have symptoms, unfortunately, we live in like a very reactive society where we sort of wait until, there's pain or there's discomfort or there's pelvic floor symptoms to like go see a specialist or to go seek help. But I wish that more moms would, do it as a preventative, right? So like even while they're pregnant, like I meet with some moms while they're pregnant, like what's the plan for after to like get back to whatever it is, XYZ. Maybe it's running, maybe it's not, maybe it's you just want to like, be able to run your house or, go back to work or play with your kids or whatever it is. But I wish more moms would, do a postpartum rehab program. I think it's like becoming more common. I think more moms are more aware, but there is a good percentage of moms who I do end up interacting with who are like, yeah, I never really like heard about pelvic floor. I never really knew it was important. I never really knew that I needed to do anything. I just had some moms on my live. Yeah, I know. I just had some moms on my live last week who were like, oh yeah, I guess really I should be doing some exercises for strengthening before I start running. So there's also a major gap between like feeling good and like energy's back to normal and like higher level activity. So whether that's exercise, running, going to the gym, bouncing on the trampoline, jogging with your dog, whatever it is, there's a huge gap between I can do Kegels and I don't, I'm not peeing myself and I don't have any pelvic floor symptoms and I want to get back to doing, X, Y, Z. And that's sort of where I come in is to like fill that gap to like make sure that your body is able to, withstand those forces and those pressures, so that you don't develop pain or pelvic floor symptoms, as a result of not doing the right things.
I so second that. And that's really how we got talking and why we decided to do this tonight is that I'm just so big also on prevention and that we don't know what we don't know. And those early days are so formative for the rest of our lives and for our children's lives. And so things like exercise, well, I have my acronym that is most recent is TENDER. We need touch rituals. We need rituals to express our needs regularly for nutrition and drinking water and exercise and rest. And so many of those look so different postpartum for what's helpful. Like we were talking about exercise, and it's also true that rest is going to look different and nutrition is going to look different. Our bodies don't process foods and digest as well postpartum. So there's all these things that learning about how to care for our bodies postpartum is also going to be one of the best things we can do for the rest of our families too. So thank you. Thank you guys for joining. I'm so excited that everybody was here. At Little Elf Family Services, we have on Friday night, we have a postpartum date night and a pregnancy date night, which is also free on Zoom. And we're going to go over some pregnancy and parenting myths. And then next Tuesday, I'm doing another free talk, which is going to be on routines you can establish during pregnancy that can help you with newborn sleep. And Audrey, you're welcome to come and we can talk sleep there too with newborns. So
yeah, that'd be helpful.
What?
Yeah, that would definitely be helpful.
Okay, awesome. Well, that'll be at the same time next Tuesday. And I'm going to put the link, we can put the link both in the chat and then also I'll put it in the comments on the Facebook video.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm like, my events page is in the chat. So it'll be there too. Awesome. Any other questions? This is so fun.
No, thank you.
I appreciate it, Rachel. I really think that this stuff is so, like I say, I didn't know it. I didn't know there was, I don't know. There's so many things that we all say, oh, I didn't know that. So, thank you, Rachel. And thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
All right. I hope to see you all soon. Hopefully Friday or Tuesday. Come and join me. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for having me. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.